Welcome to the Group Answers podcast. I'm your host, Brian Daniel. This is the weekly show designed specifically for pastors, disciple makers, group pastors, and small group leaders. Truly, we are created to help anyone with bottom line responsibilities for discipleship. Our goal is simple: to resource, train, and encourage you in the vital work of discipleship. This is the Group Answers podcast. Let's do it. Welcome back to the Group Answers Show. I'm, as always, Brian Daniel. And today, with us, I have Matt Capps, as I like to say, Matt Capps in the house, and Josh Wredberg, authors and leaders, both coming to us, I would say live, and it's live now. But it's, of course, when you're listening to it, this is recorded from the great state of North Carolina. And being from Kentucky, we, would have some things in common there, and we would share a rivalry, I would think. So, Matt, Josh, welcome to the Group Answers Show.
Great to be here.
It's good to be here.
I just want to tee up today's topic, and I'm going to turn it over to Matt and Josh just to kick us off with some personal experiences. But today we're talking about membership, and this is an important part of, or should be, our ecclesiology. And Matt, Josh, it seems to me that over time, and I think by now we can say the church growth movement, it's a matter of history now, and it has its place. But I think there are some things that happened in that movement that now we maybe have to revisit or address or maybe even correct. And I would dare say that one of those things is I don't know if the right word is dilution or not, but at least in terms of membership, the sacredness of that and what it means to be a part of the body, I think was affected in that movement. Now, that's getting to be some years ago. And so we find ourselves, 20, 30 years, I think, since that movement. I think it depends on where your markers are, but it's at least a generation behind us. But the way things go, there is a lingering remnant effect of things like this and I believe that is, and you and I haven't, the three of us have not talked prior to this recording, but I would think that's one of the things that you are attempting to address is to elevate or lift back up this idea of membership as a part of any rightful ecclesiology to a place that is more fitting of the biblical narrative, and in particular the New Testament. So I would just start there, and I don't know which one of you would want to go first, but just tee this up with a personal experience that you've had along these lines and how you got from a given point A to a point B and some of the conclusions that you've come to.
Yeah. So when I began in pastoral ministry, there were three things that stuck out to me that made me realize that church membership is so important, and we have to teach on it and really kind of raise up meaningful membership into the conversation of local church. Number one is, when I got to the church that I pastor now, I've been there 10 years, we were reporting 780 members. And we probably had about 120 people actually there. And as I began working through the roles and realized that there was about 500 people that weren't accounted for, that either moved away or whatnot, they weren't really part of the church anymore, and yet we were counting them as members. Number two, I would have conversations with people when I first arrived at the church. And you know how it is when you get a new pastor at a church, everybody kind of comes back to check him out and see what it's like. And I would talk to people and they'd say things like, yeah, I'm a member here, but I haven't attended or come to a worship service in years. And I just thought I don't know how that even works, biblically. And the third thing would be, as we began doing membership classes at the church didn't have membership classes at the time. When I would ask people in the classes to define membership, what is membership for? What are the expectations of members? I either got really blank stares or just very general answers that indicated to me that most of the people, a large portion of them, did not understand what membership is or what it's for. You couldn't define it. And so I saw that as an opportunity to teach and to really define and help clarify what membership is and why it's so important in the local church.
Yeah, I grew up in a tradition where membership was seen probably more as an obligation than anything else. So it was sort of like, I think of it like that when your iPhone updates its software and it's that long list of things it says that you're supposed to read, which no one does before you hit accept. But it's sort of this thing that has to be done. It's not life-giving. It's not joy-producing. It's not really engaged. It's just expected, and out of sort of obligation, I've got to do this thing called membership. It's expected of me, and therefore there might even be requirements that come along with it that I'm supposed to do. And it just misses what the Bible teaches about membership, which is this is an opportunity, not an obligation. God is inviting you into something that can change your life. It can transform your relationships. It can give you purpose and meaning. You can experience God's love and care in new and profound ways. Like, that's what membership is. It's something to be entered joyfully, to engage fully in, not simply an obligation to perform a list of commandments to keep. And so being in a church now where we've tried to teach that, and we see how people gravitate towards that sort of enthusiastic, exciting, life-giving view of active, engaged membership, it's just something we want others to experience as well.
I think obligation is a good word. I think the other word that comes into play here, guys, is role. When we talk about membership, I think a lot of us just automatically think about a name on a roll as in place of like a group that is devoted to prayer, to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and the teaching and the teaching of the apostles, like Acts 2 points out. And those are, it just seems like the essence over time has gotten lost. And so that's what I would ask you guys. How did we get here? I mean, I hinted at it there at the top of the show, but from your perspective, how do you think so many churches neglect the practice of meaningful membership? That we get away from obligation, that we get away from a name on a roll, or our various capacities in some program, I think is sometimes how this manifests itself. But just track for us just the recent history as to how we got here, and how did we come to a place where we're to some degree negligent of meaningful membership?
Well, I think certainly an aspect of it is we just have a very consumer society, the culture. We are looked at as consumers. So businesses look at everyone as a potential consumer, and everything is designed to get them to engage and to consume whatever the product is. And we'd be foolish to think that hasn't infiltrated the church. And so membership is then often watered down to being similar to the other types of membership. So a gym membership. What's a gym membership? Well, there's very little obligation. You pay your monthly fee. In fact, the best gym members are the ones who pay every month but never show up, because they don't do any wear and tear on the equipment, but they pay a little bit every month. You get something back for it. Costco, Sam's Club, all of these. Like, there's some way I enter this membership. It doesn't really do much, but if it's useful for me in some way, then sure, I'll do it. And the view of membership in the Bible is so much more robust than simply something transactional. But I think that's what it's been boiled down to, both from the church side corporately, but also from the individual side. Like, well, why should I join this church? What do I get from it? These, I think, are a lot of the ways we approach it. And then churches market that way. Come be a member, then you'll get this out of it. And we think the call to membership is a call, like Jesus says, to come and die, to spend yourself for the sake of others, to give as Christ gave. It's much more about how you engage and give than it is what you receive, though certainly what you receive is wonderful. That's not the focus. So that consumeristic mindset, which is prevalent across really everything we do culturally, has seeped its way into the church and shaped how we think about membership.
Yeah, and beyond the consumerism, there's also individualism. So we live in this society where individuals live under the illusion that they're self-sufficient. I mean, honestly, all of us could order anything we need online and it comes to the door. We're not dependent on other people. When you think about the early church, they existed in a period where families and groups were not only necessary for their flourishing, but the group was also where they found their identity and purpose. And so when you read the New Testament and you see the 40 plus one another passages, love one another, outdo one another, and good works, forgive one another, what we have to formalize now because of our individualistic culture was just the way they lived then. They lived in communion with one another, and they were dependent on one another. And I think in some ways it starts with our understanding of sanctification. We have this idea that we can our sanctification as an individual project. And I think in the New Testament, it's a group project, and God has designed the church to be the primary place where sanctification happens. And so I think we need to teach our people that membership is necessary to growth in Christianity, and it's part and parcel to being a Christian.
Membership at the again in its rightful place does transfer to effective small group ministry, right? I would just be interested in your thoughts on the trickle down effect, let's call it, of taking a more biblical approach to membership, meaningful membership, and its effect on the vibrancy and effectiveness of any small group ministry.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give you an example. This happened probably a decade ago. I was in a grocery store in my community, and I was stopped by an elderly gentleman in one of the aisles, and he was very upset with me because he had been in the hospital, and no one from the church reached out to him. And I said, I'm so sorry for that. We love to care for our people. I said, what small group are you in? What home group are you in? And he said, well, I'm not. And I said, are you in a discipleship group? He said, no, I just come to the worship gathering, but I'm not involved in a group. And it was in that moment I realized, well, that's why, it's very easy for people to come and worship in the gathering, which is necessary and good. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there's also, I think, when it comes to meaningful membership, that means active participation in the life of the church, relationally with one another. And most churches, you have groups to accomplish that. So the person that just kind of slips into the worship service and then leaves and is not involved in, small groups, discipleship groups, doesn't come to the members' meetings, things of that nature, it's very easy for them to kind of slip through the cracks, if you will. And so I think part of raising the level of awareness and importance of membership is also encouraging, exhorting our people to be in groups and to be in situations where they are studying the Word together, praying together, and practicing the one another's on a weekly basis.
When we talk about membership, we divide into 7 roles, and each of these roles is a significant part of what it means to be a member. And one of those roles is every member is a minister. So Ephesians 4 says that God has given the church the gifts, and he lists them, and one of them is pastors and teachers to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. So the job of a pastor, the job of church leaders is to equip the saints to do the ministry, or we would say the members of the church to do the ministry. And so where does that ministry take place? Well, usually it takes place in smaller settings. And so when membership is understood correctly, part of it is that every member takes on this role of being a minister, that you are called by God to gather together to be equipped so that then you go out and minister to the other members. And like I said, that's most likely to happen in a setting that is smaller, so there's opportunities. That passage goes on to say, speaking the truth in love. Well, the means by which you minister to others is yes, it can be serving their practical physical needs, but it can't be apart from speaking the truth in love. So a loving relationship in which the truth comes out so that others grow up into maturity, that's the ministry every member's been given. So without meaningful membership, what is the context in which that Ephesians 4 activity is done? Well, who are the saints that are being equipped? Who are they ministering to? Who are they speaking the truth in love? There has to be some way in which this, some relationship in which this takes place, and that's the church and those who are particularly part of that church through membership. And so we think membership works itself out in all of the ministries of the church, but certainly in these smaller group settings where each member takes on this role is like, I've come today to minister to the other members. Just think about the best small group you've ever been. That's the attitude. It's not a bunch of people showing up, just to hang out, or a bunch of people showing up to receive. It's people that are coming there. And it's like, I'm coming with my hard hat on. I got my lunch pail because I'm here to work. I'm coming from my job to my small group tonight, and this is my serious work. This is where I'm going to do the work God has called me and equipped me to do.
Let me ask you this: in the given the consumerism, given the individualism, and also, I'm sure you guys track the research, some of what we're seeing in the emerging generations, and you guys are both senior pastors, lead pastors. Are we at a place to where there is a renewed openness to an increased demand on a disciple's journey, and that you're seeing people open to that, like a higher calling to membership, for instance, like Josh, you used the word obligation, and that's something that probably is more recently in vogue with generations, but now we're moving into a place where it seems to me that new disciples, maturing disciples, are actually looking for places for a greater expectation or greater demands on their life as a disciple. Are you picking up on that? And that's one of the things that you're writing this book into this emerging environment. Would you agree? I mean, is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think we see this longing for belonging that is just, it's always been there, but I think the rise of things like social media has made people feel more and more disconnected. And so I think that is pushing a good thing, which is I actually want to be connected. And membership is above all, right? It's you're saying I'm connected. Let's go back to Ephesians 4. I'm a part of this body, this actual body of people. Like I might be a kneecap, I might be a ligament, I might be a pinky toe, but I'm part of it, and I want to be part of it because it gives my life purpose and meaning. I think there's been a big uptick in young people, maybe even more so young men, which is an encouraging thing. Just because that is a group that we often think of as being disconnected, as sort of being, trying to figure themselves out. More and more are saying like, no, I want my life to account for something. So Ephesians 3 verse 10 says that God displays his wisdom to the watching powers through his church. Like, what's bigger than that in your life? What in your life was more significant than the cosmic powers looking at what we do in our little town, in our little church, and we say, we serve each other in such a way that the cosmic powers look at it and say, look how wise God is because of what I see those people doing. Like that's worth living for. That's a life of purpose. And I think younger people are pushing into that. Like they're saying, I'm sick of being disconnected. I'm sick of casual relationships. I'm sick of wasting my time on meaningless things. I want something where my life is going to matter. And the beauty is that God has a thing for them. He's like, it's my church. Like this is the way to leverage your life, not just for the length of your life, but really for eternity. And I think that's compelling.
Yeah. And, you think about Jesus, he mentions the church twice. Matthew 16 and 18. Matthew 16, it's where Peter makes the right confession. So Matthew 16 is the idea is the confessors make the right confession. That's the entrance into the church, right? Matthew 18 is church discipline, where the idea is you go through this process so those confessors remain in the confession, that their life follows the confession they're making. God designed the church for that purpose. And I think people are seeing that, and they want churches that take membership seriously. I also think people want to be a part of something larger than themselves. When you think about the local church, that is where God has designed. I believe that God's plan A to reach the world is the local church. Like we have great parachurch ministries, missions organizations, but it's all rooted in the church. The church is the only place where Jesus has attached his name to it, right? The gates of hell will not stand against my church. Jesus said that. He put his name on it. I think people understand that. So they believe what Jesus said. They want to be something larger, a part of something larger than themselves. And I think 3, we live in a culture that's so transient and disconnected. The local church, like puts your feet on the ground. It's like your feet are in the dirt, and it grounds you, and it helps you. You're a part of something real, and like Josh said, lasting and relational. In a culture where there's so many transient things that people just feel like they're floating around life. The church brings you back to the ground. And I think people want that.
Yeah, I would just take this moment just to talk directly to small group leaders real quick. This is a moment, I think. I think what Josh and Matt are saying, it fits the narrative right now. And there is a disconnect. We've never been more, quote unquote, connected, but I think I would contend that we've never been more disconnected at the same time. And the resulting sentiment is a disorientation of sorts. And I think what this conversation is pointing to, Josh said it, is this idea of purpose and meaning. You can use words like rhythm. You can use words, I like the word fabric. We're talking about the fabric of life here is beckoning, is really calling us into it. And the church has a unique place in the cultural vernacular right now. And I think there is an opportunity. I think membership is one of the entry points to seize this moment. And the small group piece of it is like the outreach part of it. This is the part of the organization, the church, the living organism is the church that's feeling out in the community. And I would definitely just exhort everyone to just take that for granted and to act on it. But let me ask you guys this. So Josh, you mentioned athletic clubs, and it's pretty interesting. I've got another conversation going with a pastor friend of mine that's in California, and he talks about church membership as it relates to other things that we're all very familiar with. So gym membership, I'm a member of the Evergreen Athletic Club, and I've got some friends down there, but really, Josh, to your point, they don't really care if I show up or not. If I don't show up on Tuesday afternoon, there's no email going out. Where were you? We missed you. However, an organization like CrossFit is a little different than that. If you're talking with someone, now it's different now because I think the joke is out. But the joke was, if you want to know if someone does CrossFit or not, don't worry, they'll tell you or something like that. But there's this sense of belonging in an organization like CrossFit that the Evergreen Athletic Club does not boast, does not have. So I would just ask you guys, we're talking about meaningful membership, not just a name on a roll or not just a set of obligations or boxes you've got to check. There's a life-giving aspect to it that it seems like some secular organizations have tapped into, that the church has lost or is slow to embrace at large. That's not everyone. And I would just ask you guys, what can we learn from what we're seeing in the culture from an organization or a movement like CrossFit that could be applied to what we're talking about today, which is this idea of meaningful membership?
Well, I would say it goes back a little bit to what you were talking about sort of, we were talking about earlier about consumerism, church growth type stuff. I did CrossFit for like 6 or 7 months. My knees couldn't handle it any longer. So I couldn't keep going. But I'll tell you what, they don't lower the bar of commitment. They make you commit, and you feel like you're committing. One of the things that stood out to me was it felt like the most competitive thing I've done since playing college sports was CrossFit. They raise the bar and they push you for it. And think about what church membership often has been a lowering of the bar. Like, it's like, oh, just come, attend, maybe, hopefully you'll give some money. Maybe you'll sign up for something.
Come as you are
and don't change. And
stay as you were. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Or don't even come, just watch us online and, send in your automatic banking information, right? Just this lowered bar. And I think CrossFit's reminding us that lowering the bar doesn't actually bring commitment at all. It might bring attendance. It might bring like loose connection. It doesn't bring commitment. What brings commitment is to say there's a high bar because it's worth it. You're doing something valuable. Like, you're doing something that CrossFit would say is changing your lives. I would say, well, it's maybe changing your physique. We're saying the church changes your life and it changes the lives of others. And so CrossFit shouldn't have a higher bar of commitment than the church does. So when we talk about not obligation, but opportunity, we're not saying lower the bar for that to happen. We're actually saying raise the bar and saying, why should I do this? It's like, do you want your life to maximize the impact of your life? Well, the way God designed that is do it in the church, commit to a church. And so I think that's one thing we can learn, is that we may think lowering the bar gets more people engaged, but it doesn't. It's the opposite. The high bar of commitment shows value. One of my sons is a Marine. It's a high bar. But when he went from sort of a goofy 18-year-old to 4 months later, a United States Marine, the level of commitment necessary to do that, but he talked differently. Like his purpose in life, he's like, I'm a Marine now. That's different, right? So it was that high bar, that high commitment, that high level of sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. Like that was life-changing for him. And that's what the church should be.
Yeah, let me encourage the group leaders and pastors listening, because there's a higher bar, but understand what the church offers. You don't go to the local gym for marriage counseling, or you don't go to your local car club. The car club gathers around mutual love or affection for a '68 Corvette, but that only touches one area of your life. The church and the gospel, that transforms all of life, right? So there's a reason to raise the bar, because you're dealing with eternity. And number two, the church is the only institution, in a sense, that lasts into eternity, right? Every other institution we have is either trying to curtail like our physical ailments or make our lives on this earth better. The local church like lasts into eternity. And so the raising the bar sees these realities that we're dealing with all of life and we're dealing with eternity. And there's high stakes here, but it's worth it, right? Because you have the Word of God, you have the Spirit of God, and God does amazing work through the local church. And so I would say, don't be afraid to raise the bar. Like, see what you're dealing with, raise the bar, and see what God's going to do.
So let me ask you guys, you outlined 7 roles of a church member. And I've got these in front of me: worshiper, minister, servant, disciple maker, giver, intercessor, and ambassador. We've touched on some of these already, but walk us through each one and its characteristics.
Well, let me just point out something about all of them before we go through each one, Brian, and that's, notice how none of them are phrased as something you receive. There's something you do. And we think that's the mindset shift that aligns with the scriptures, is that, again, it's that consumer. I just show up to church to get something. And while certainly church benefits us, we would not doubt that, it calls us to engage. So it's not like I go and I watch others worship. I go to be ministered to. I go to be served. These are all things I get. It's no, you're called to do something. You're called to invest your life, to take on these roles. Jesus has called you into these. And so, for instance, when we think of one like worshiper, we think about the process. You are called to go to a place where you worship with other people, and that worshiping with others is formative, which is why it's different. We have the ability right now, I can pick my favorite worship songs and make a playlist. I can pick my favorite preacher, and I can listen to his sermons, even my favorite sermons by his, and I could have a worship experience. But that's not what the Bible looks at as worship, because it says speaking to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. So I'm singing to Jesus, but I'm singing for the saints at our church. And the power of that is that it's formative in nature. When I look out and I see others doing it. So just think about there's a couple in my church who had gone through just a horrible physical situation, losing a child, and knew it was coming for months. The first time we saw them in church after that, and you knew they were worshiping through tears and suffering, the power that has to form and shape our affections is far greater than anything that could have happened in my car listening to music. And so, when we're called to be a worshiper, we're called to be a worshiper because it shapes us, but also because our worship shapes others.
Yeah. And you think about minister, like Josh talked about earlier, where Paul says, one of the roles of the pastor is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. So the church is not like a gathering of Christians that have, a gifted pastor that has all the gifts. There's only one man that's ever walked the earth that has all the spiritual gifts, and that was Jesus. There's a reason it's called the body of Christ, because we're all given gifts to serve in the work of the ministry. You think about giving. I mean, some people in our churches have the ability to just earn money well, and that's their ministry is to give, to fund the ministries of the church and mission partners. But everybody is called to give, right? To contribute to the whole. Intercessor, you think about the power of the church praying so you think about worshiper, minister, servant, disciple maker, giver, intercessor, ambassador. Like Josh said, we're calling everyone to be an active participant. One of the things we could have done with the book, because we talked about the word role a minute ago, there's a difference between a membership role, ROLL, and ROLE, right? Everybody has a role to play. Nobody's ultimate and nobody's unnecessary. Like, we all have to be a part of this, and that's what God calls us to be.
Well, and Brian, that last one of ambassador too, there could be a tendency to think when we're talking about membership, we're talking about something very inward focused, but that's not it. It's, yes, we're doing this within the context of the church, but we're doing this so that we taste, smell, and look like the kingdom of Jesus. And we do it publicly in front of other people so that non-Christians see something about the character of God and the way we treat each other, the way we love each other, the way we serve each other, the way that we worship God together, and it's compelling to them. And then we speak boldly to them, calling them to know and love Jesus Christ.
I really like the way that you framed up intercessor as a way to articulate or be inclusive of prayer in this idea. And there's a posture that's implied here that we are open to the prayer needs and cognizant of those things and actively seeking those and then intercessing on behalf of those prayer needs. And that's a very active way of getting the just notions of prayer into the 7 roles of the church member as well. Well, the book is Every Member Matters, Why Your Church Needs You and Why You Need Your Church. This is available anywhere you buy books, written by Matt Capps and Josh Wredberg and published by B&H Publishing. Matt, Josh, thanks for being with us today. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Group Answers Show. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I would encourage everyone to go find this book. Group leaders, any disciple makers, certainly senior pastors, highly recommended. Thanks for being with us, and that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Group Answers Podcast. This episode of Group Answers Podcast was brought to you by our team, executive producer Angie Elkins, producer Nikki Ogden, edited by Donnie Gordon. All episodes are recorded at my personal studio in Evergreen, Colorado, with the help of Riverside FM. Artwork by Lauren Urban. And I'm your host, Brian Daniel. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Group Answers Podcast.